This is the Healthcare Marketplace Specialization, Healthcare Marketplace Overview. I'm Steve Parenti, and this is Module 5.2.4, Provider Information Technology. The medical center data systems are some of the most complex systems in IT that are actually on the planet. There are so many different elements that go into these systems. We talked about this before in terms of a pyramid of hardware, data, and life support. The reason why this pyramid structure is that sometimes you need to replace the hardware layers that are just too old. Computers get old, modems get old, routers get old, and so you swap it all out. Actually, you can get rid of the modems and put in IT switches, but you still need to keep all your data. You can't lose the data, and so a lot of these things, the thought is you try to make them as interchangeable as possible. But there's so many core systems here, whether it's scheduling or clinical, nursing, laboratory, radiology, pharmacy. All of these are order entry systems. Keeping one number for who that patient is so they don't get lost. Having the results from all these tests coming together and be summarized, making sure the data is secure with adequate network security and so that the right people get access to the information. Just so many things going on here. So to try to break it down, there's operational data that's inside a healthcare system. Much of it is transaction oriented. The pharmacies, the laboratories, radiology, they basically operate what's known as order entry systems, so that a physician orders a drug for a patient. It is sort of wish fulfillment the same way Amazon would do it. Same thing for laboratories. If the physician orders a lab test to be done, they would get be filled that way. Radiology, you get the idea. You get to have a chest x-ray come back, an MRI, CAT scan image. When we look at critical care units, this is more looking at what time and materials and the level of personnel that are there, say for a hospital neonatal intensive care unit. And then all of it is really being governed by keeping track on what different units are in place for different, whether it's blood processing, could be inventory control for drugs, syringes, all sorts of things that are into play for the hospital inpatient event. The other thing that's part of this world is analytic data. And so when we have analytic data, we try to organize it by the patient and by their patient and their event. Usually that could be an inpatient event, meaning a hospital admission. So that when we do that, we try to structure the data so that it actually carries with it a lot of additional information. So on one row, we might know the person's name, or really keep it confidential, some sort of secure ID, but we also know their diagnosis. We know what pharmacies they've gotten. We know what pharmacies they've gotten from like 1 to like 50. We know all the doctors that have treated them, say doctors 1 through, say, 40. And a lot of that information is going to be organized and carried along. Maybe it's going to be one row, like an Excel spreadsheet, or organized through different workbook structures. Ideally, you want to have one single record that at least looks like it links to a single record through an interoperable worksheet or a relational database. And the notion of storing the data horizontally is that so that for that given person, we have all these other elements we can tie together for their event. There are standards for medical records, or at least looser standards. The HL7 is actually a term that was used for mainframe data structures by IBM. The idea being that the 7th level is the most detailed level. There are lots of layers that go from, say, like I have a computer, level 1, to exactly what field is in what position and what is it measuring for different lab tests, say at level 7. They would talk about things like patient registry information, orders, clinical information, referral information. What needs to be understood is that HL7 isn't so much of a standard as it is sort of a way to operate across a blueprint of how one institution puts their data in a structure versus another. This is very important in case the institution wants to buy a new electronic medical record system, which could cost lots of money, and they have to swap out the old data for the new, but at the same time keep some of the legacy information and know how the information maps back and forth. An HL7 standard allows that to occur. Different code systems that are really core to technology. If even as a patient, and you really don't do much with computers in healthcare at all, if you just know these code systems and it can tell you a lot about what happens to your care or your loved one's care. Diagnosis codes are governed generally by International Classification of Diseases, version 9. Actually, we're now finally, knock on wood somewhere, on version 10, which actually was invented in 1992, but it only took really 2 decades for it to come online. This one's still the same. Current procedural terminology, version 4. You will see ICD-9 codes actually still in operation. The ICD-10 is about 40,000 codes versus the ICD-9 code set, which is closer to 8,000 in terms of actual operational codes. And there's going to be a lot of transitions here. Drug codes, that is the Food and Drug Administration's National Drug Code Directory. It's 11 digits long. We'll say it will refer to things such as the dosing of the drug, the units of the drug, and the form of the drug. Is it a pill? Is it a serum? Is it a powder? This concludes our module on the structure of medical provider data.